Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the February 7th meeting of the Toronto Debating Society. Our topic for this evening is romance is overrated. And I would like to welcome the Prime Minister to come up and speak for 7 minutes. Michelle.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I'm going to speak to you about the resolution that we proposed for you. Be it resolved that romance is overrated. I will define that resolution and I will introduce our main points for your consideration. Romance is defined as the amorous pursuit of a partner. Overrated. Results are less than those for which one has been led to believe. Therefore, the resolution that we proposed, romance, or the amorous pursuit of a partner, is overrated, and the results are less than those for which you've been led to believe they would be. To set this up, ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to think, to consider, to remember the first time that you caught somebody's eye. Perhaps you caught their eye or they caught your eye. Perhaps you were 2, perhaps you were 3, perhaps you were 5, 8, 16, 17, 14, 30, 40, 50, 60. But that very first time that somebody caught your eye and you thought, I wonder what that's all about. Or the first time that they started to chase you. I remember, and yes, this is a personal story, but I remember being a young child in grade 4 and having the boys chase the girls around the schoolyard at recess time, and the girls squealing, and oh no, I don't want him to touch me, and the boys chasing. But the girls secretly loved it, and the boys secretly loved it, and it was a little game that was played. And that continued all the way through. That continued all the way through school, and it continues in our 20s, and in our 30s, and in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It continues all the way through life. And it's those brief moments that I'd like you to remember, because those brief moments of squealing, perhaps you were one of the girls that squealed, they're lovely. Let's face it, those are fun times. But, ladies and gentlemen, what we are put forth, we're not saying that romance is not to be considered, but that it is overrated. And so if we look at who rates it, we have to compare it to something. How does this get to become overrated in our mind? Where does this come from, this idea of being pursued? Why do we want that? Why do we think that that's cool? Why do we want to pursue somebody else? Several reasons. One is it's flattering. Who says that it's flattering? We have to look at our media, actually. And this is pre-social media days. If we look at fairy tales, Cinderella up in her castle, Snow White asleep, only to be saved by that gorgeous prince who will take her away. Hansel and Gretel with the evil stepmother. There's going to be a whole bunch of Snow Whites coming out this year, so we're going to be reminded of this. Alice in Wonderland. So the fairy tale world shows us that it is good to be pursued and it is good to be caught. But that's where the story ends, ladies and gentlemen. The story ends with a big smile on everybody's faces. The story does not include realities such as diapers, and who's going to shovel the snow, and who's going to pay the mortgage, and who's going to pay the rent, and who's going to choose the couch, and the arguments that will ensue over the color of the sofa that has to go in the living room that you don't even want. All of that. The story ends in our fairy tale world and in our media world at dinner, or it ends at the kiss, or it ends when the princess wakes up. The member of the opposition, not in the debate, of course, I think it was Michael, who mentioned the Kardashian wedding, or Dean mentioned the Kardashian. Who cares? I can't even pronounce her name. But we care so fervently about whether or not she has dinner. Jennifer Aniston had dinner and there was an arm around her. Therefore, there's romance. Therefore, the world as we know it has stopped. But no, ladies and gentlemen, that is overrated. So we have 4 main arguments that I'm going to discuss for you. And then my partner is going to pick it up, and he's going to kick it up a notch, as Jim loves to do. So romance, the act of wooing. Ladies and gentlemen, number 1, does not guarantee or translate into a healthy, long-term, loving, faithful partnership. Romance is not enough. Number 2, romance is subjective. Each of us have different ideas of what is romantic at different points in our lives. Number 3, Romance leads to disappointment, which can lead to, ladies and gentlemen, euphoric ups and downs, which can lead to depression. And number 4, it's addictive. And being addictive, it can cause all sorts of erratic behavior, most importantly, infidelity, which is not good for a loving long-term relationship. Romance. Now this, ladies and gentlemen, I polled 100 couples who had been together for more than 40 years. This is hard to find, I have to tell you. I've been working on this for a while. They've been together for more than 40 years, and I said that the debate topic is romance is overrated. You're going to have a hard time. And I said, well, romance, is that the most important thing in your relationship? Well, no. As it turned out, they needed somebody kind, and they needed somebody who could support them, and they needed somebody they could communicate with, and they needed somebody they could talk to, and they needed somebody who would have their back. And all of these other things wrapped around a loving relationship, that's what they needed. They didn't need romance all the time, as in the act of wooing. Even in India, I'll take as an example, where love is said to come after marriage in the traditional arranged marriage situation. Love comes after. The union is made, and it builds with time. It doesn't come right off the bat when two people look at each other across the schoolyard. Romance is subjective. Each of us has a different understanding and need at different points in our lives. When we're 5 years old, we want the boy to chase us or the girl to chase us across the schoolyard. When we're 14, we want him or her to take us out for dinner. When we're 16, we want them to drive a car. When we're 20, when we're 30, when we're 40, when we're 50, this changes with each passing day, with each passing year, with each of our experiences which in fact mold us into the people that we are. Number 3, romance is disappointing. The euphoric ups and downs of being pursued, not being pursued, the depression that it can cause. I have numerous friends who will gladly come in and give a case-by-case analysis. Blog sites are full of how to recover from the end of a romance. And the elusive, tantalizing attraction of being pursued is addictive. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where we get into the case of infidelity. For those reasons, ladies and gentlemen, please support the resolution.
Thank you, Michelle. I would now like to ask Parampreet to come up and present the case for the opposition.
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to rush into this debate because I think we need to really get to know each other first before we sort of talk about these little nitty-gritties of definitions and statistics and all of that. I just want to start off by saying that you all just look radiant tonight. You really do. It looks like, have you been working out? Is that what's been happening? Because this looks like the best debating audience I've ever stood in front of. And I just feel so honored to be standing here in front of you, presenting you with these ideas. Because I would like us to consider, at the most basic, most prosaic level, we're just a bunch of chemicals bashing against each other. We're atoms in the mist, come together as bodies, as primates, as mammals. And it's true. Existence is hard. Love is painful. Death is awaiting us. All we are saying is that one beacon in the midst of all of that is romance. It's true. It's true. Often failure follows romance. But is this a bad thing? Any worthwhile pursuit can often lead to failure. Both myself and my partner will bring tremendous examples of this. Yes, there's divorce rate is high. It's in Canada, it's 4 out of 10. But consider this, 6 out of 10 marriages don't end in divorce. That's quite substantial. And I will say My biggest gripe with what the Prime Minister has presented is that I feel they have a very shallow view of romance. Because I consider all those little nitty-gritty things, just like as in our lives, we have to deal, we are machines, biological machines that need to eat. We're biological machines that need to excrete. We are biological machines that need to function in the world. But just because we need to eat doesn't mean that we can't sit down to a feast and enjoy each other's company. Just because we need to work doesn't mean we can't be at work and enjoy our co-workers. And so it is with a marriage. There's depth in the midst of all of those hardships, the mortgage, the cooking, the taking care of the baby, the driving to work, fixing the house. That doesn't mean there's not romance still available in a marriage. In fact, that's what got us together in the first place. I would argue that marriage would not exist if there was no romance. The Prime Minister gave us a personal anecdote. I'll give one too. I can assure you that when I proposed to my wife, I did not say, honey, we're a couple of primates. We kind of lean towards coupling. It said that, the tendency is to have lifelong partnerships. That would have ended in results that are less than I was led to believe. No, I told her that she was as you said, the apple of my eye, that I wanted to be a better man because of her, that I wanted to live with her and be with her for the rest of my life and show her that I could honor her commitment to me. And I will say, yes, love is addictive. It's addictive every morning. And I don't have to seek any other woman because I feel like every morning I wake up with a different woman. So, it can be varied. That's the thing. Marriage can be varied. It's that we don't put enough effort into it. That's why it's not overrated. We ourselves need to put more attention to our marriage. And I talked about failure rates. I know that the Prime Minister and the government has said that results are disappointing. Well, let's take a look at business. In business, 9 out of 10 businesses fail. But that doesn't mean business is overrated. People are seeking something worthwhile. Let's take a look at sports. We have athletes that perform at the highest level. 99.99% of athletes never make it there. We're not saying sports is overrated. Same is true in the entertainment field. And I have to say, I give full credit to those who don't feel those things are overrated. Because in fact, those are the brave souls that just put their heart out, that give it their all, knowing that their desire for it is subjective, as the government has said, knowing that disappointment awaits them, knowing that they are most likely to fail, they still do it. They have this crazy passion for it that allows them to push through, and because of that, we are able to have these tremendous, tremendous advanced experts in all of those fields. So I will say, yes, most people fail. But I will also say those who don't try to do it, 100% of them fail. So that's a worse failure rate. Recently in The Guardian, there was an article discussing regrets of the dying. It's a nurse who took down and did statistics. And one of the top 5 was, everyone regretted. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. And of course, the biggest feeling being the expression of love and romance. They didn't say that, I'm saying that, is that the expression of love is what we all long for. It's biologically built into us. It's what drives us. And my partner will also discuss the many other ways in which we seek romance. And I guess my primary my primary point is that anything worthwhile, yes, there's failure. Yes, it's less than we're led to believe, but it's not overrated.
Thank you, Parampreet. I would now like to call on Jim to come up as the seconder for the government.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, honourable members of the various parts of the debate this evening. Well, ladies and gentlemen, where do I start with the Leader of the Opposition's amble? It wasn't even a preamble, it was just an expression of how much love can change us all. And we in the government agree. What the Leader of the Opposition is missing is what we are discussing romance. The government agrees that love is probably the most important thing in anyone's life. But the opposition seems content to say that romance doesn't really play a great part in this. It's more that we need love. Where is the idea that romance? He sort of threw it in here and there, and basically what he said after he was trying to warm up the audience, very pathetically, what he was doing was to say, ladies and gentlemen, does this logical fallacy make me look fat? Well, yes, it does. Ladies and gentlemen, the Leader of the Opposition is talking about failures of marriage, failures of love, but he hasn't identified that romance is a part of this loving. He hasn't said that this is essential. He hasn't identified that the romance is adequately rated or underrated. It was really just a mishmash of what he thinks and why he got married, and it didn't really relate to any aspect of romance. It was about him having a wonderful time with his wife, and that's great. Calm down, calm down. Also, what we also have here is are businesses and athletes or entertainers overrated? Ladies and gentlemen, what is it that we're discussing here tonight? Are we discussing if businesses are overrated? What has business got to do with romance? Good question. I will answer that when I get into my aspect here. Well, we must try. What is it that makes the romance necessary? The opposition hasn't even identified a necessity for romance. Yes, love is great, but where is it the romance that's part of what the opposition is trying to get across? Is romance a fundamental aspect of love? The opposition hasn't even brought that up. So, ladies and gentlemen, it was just a mishmash of ideas that didn't really amount to a hill of beans. So, after the spectacular introduction of the debate from my partner here, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to bring to you the idea that romance is overrated because it's part of a commercial venture. So, ladies and gentlemen, what we're doing here in the government is to say, all of you people out there who feel that you have missed out on romance because you think that it should be better than it was, or you are in a loving relationship now, what we're here to say is, it's okay. Don't feel guilty if you haven't achieved this aspect of romance that you're told you have to do. It's okay because romance is overrated and you're not to blame. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're in a relationship that isn't working, it's not because of you, it's because your expectations of romance are overrated. Thank you. So, I would like to bring up, I was recently in the United Kingdom with a friend of mine, and he's married to a lady who is Muslim, actually. And I want to bring this up because at no point in their initial relationship was romance involved, because whenever they went out, mother-in-law, future mother-in-law, had to be there. What was it that stopped them from having romance? It was a mother-in-law. So, but they became a loving couple without the romance. They didn't need to have romance in their life, and that's exactly what we in the government are saying, ladies and gentlemen. You do not need romance, because romance is some concept that's generated by various aspects of society to make you feel that you have to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, do not listen to the opposition because they really don't know what they're doing, and vote for the government because romance definitely is overrated. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I would now like to ask Michael to come up and build on the case for the opposition.
The pleasure. Fairy tales indeed, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not sure what rating or whose rating numerically they're talking about. There's no benchmark given, so I don't know what how they measure any of this. There was no mention of that. Ladies and gentlemen, to refute the government, just because romance doesn't meet someone's expectations doesn't mean it's overrated. Some people could say that democracy is overrated. Sure, there's problems with it, but just because there's problems with it doesn't mean we overrate democracy, ladies and gentlemen. Nor has the government differentiated between the expectations of men or women. Some men may not agree. Few men and most women certainly don't feel it's overrated, and just because a few people don't perhaps feel it's overrated, the majority, they have not proven that the majority think it's overrated. For those whose realizations aren't up to expectations, the problem are their expectations, not the romance itself. We all don't get as much out of perhaps capitalism as we'd like to, but that doesn't mean capitalism is overrated. Romantic activities give people opportunities to see if the other person is right for them. The government doesn't agree. How do they feel potential partners should be elected? Maybe marriage should be arranged by the parents. What about a lottery? Maybe some computer-generated printout. Maybe Rob Ford should decide for us. I'm not sure. You know, romance is the prelude to love. Maybe the government doesn't believe in romance because they don't believe in love either. Sounds like that might be the case. And that's why to them romance is overrated and not necessary. The government, I guess, thinks that everybody should be single, live alone. Maybe men could put their sperm in some RSP sperm bank, and women could draw on it whenever they wanted to have children. Who needs love? Who needs romance? Who needs even parents? Certainly, for that matter, babies can just be born and they send them to daycare for 21 years. Come on, who needs romance? Love? Forget it. The previous speaker sounds about as romantic to me as, let me say, a horny, drunken sailor on shore leave after being 6 months at sea. A lot of romance there. It reminds me of a person I know whose idea of foreplay is 2 hours of begging. If romance is so overrated, how come it's so popular? Proof? Just look around you, folks. 100 million people a month consult dating websites, looking for romance. Even married people are looking for romance. Ashley Madison has 10 million users, ladies and gentlemen. Harlequin Romance, published right here by the Toronto Star. Just one of hundreds of romantic publishers. 120 books published a month. 29 languages, 130 countries. Romance is overrated? You talk about business, there's the lie to your argument. Does the government think romance is overrated? Try to make a dinner reservation, not that I expect the previous speaker will be doing this, next Valentine's Day, next week. Try to make a dinner reservation on that night. People spend billions on romantic expressions all year round. Flowers, cards, jewelry, chocolates, dinners out, and all sorts of things like that. Romantic comedies are the most popular form of movies statistically. Billions of dollars are spent on marriages, which is the culmination of romance. Romance seems to be chiefly overrated by disgruntled potential lovers who have been unlucky in love. Just like capitalism is overrated by people who haven't done too well financially. Yes, romance does slowly fade a little bit, but that doesn't negate the necessity of romance in the earlier stages of a relationship. And the government didn't define what stage of life they're talking about, so this is quite pertinent. It's extremely important in that stage of life, and therefore not overrated. Romance is a necessary step on the road to love. Love is the end, romance is the means to that end. The government talks about amorous pursuit. Did they give you one technique that you would use? That's what romance is. They said, oh, but they didn't say how you pursue. That's what romance is. They talk about the ideal, but not how to do it. That's a pretty big flaw there. As you all know, there's a chemical produced when people are in love. Romance is part of evolution. It's wired into our human chemistry. You may think that romance is overrated, but your body doesn't. Ladies and gentlemen, romance is not overrated.
Wow, thank you, Michael. I would now like to call on Parampreet to do the final summation for the case of the opposition.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've really shown you what the foundation of our case is. And the foundation of our case is that we need romance. We crave romance. Yes, sometimes it doesn't work out, but we still want it. And sometimes it does work out. And as my partner just expressed, when it works out, our body rewards us and our life is beautiful. We all want romance. And I'm going to tell you that, you know, the Prime Minister and the Secretary of the government, all they've said is that it does not guarantee healthy relationships. That is disappointing, that is subjective. Well, yes, but sometimes it does work out. That's the foundation of our argument. And that's why it's not overrated. No one said everything in life you're going to get 100%. That was the point of the business analogy. That was the point of the capitalism analogy. No one has promised us that. What romance promises us, as I started out by saying, it promises us that in this sea of which we are just alone sometimes, we're just a bunch of atoms bashing against each other, well, romance is our one savior. It's the one thing that brings joy to life. It brings love to life. And I know that you may decide that our argument wasn't strong enough. That we are not going to get the votes of the adjudicator, or we may not get the votes of the audience, but we still will say this debate was a joy to behold, a joy to be in front of you, because we both believe it is better to have debated and lost than to not have debated at all.
Thank you, Parampreet. I would now like to call on Michelle to do the final summation for the government's case.
Just would like to start by saying to the opposition, it's not you, it's us. Ladies and gentlemen, there was so much there that the member of the opposition just gave to us. Did you catch it all? Infidelity. People become addicted to falling in love. They want romance. They cheat on their wives and husbands. They go where? Where do they go, ladies and gentlemen? Ashley Madison, online websites. That's where they go. He gave it to us, ladies and gentlemen. Capitalism disappoints. Yes. Democracy disappoints. Yes, of course we overrate those. We follow it. We live here. Of course we overrate them. We're talking about the pursuit, the wooing pursuit of a partner. The opposition even mentioned that love ends when you get married. How friggin' disappointing. Not to mention expensive. It ends. Romance ends when you get married. There was just so much there for us, ladies and gentlemen. ring. We do crave romance. It's not that we're saying not. And the bodily, yeah, when we get heartbroken, does anybody else crave buckets of booze? When's the last time anybody was heartbroken? It's horrible what happens to our bodies. The tension, the stress, the anxiety. I went through it twice last year. I can give you a blow-by-blow example. It's horrible. That's not fun. That's not fun. Anyway, once you're on your gravestone, ladies and gentlemen, once you're dead, once you're under the ground, with maybe perhaps you're burnt, the word there in the ashes. What do you want said about you? Do you want it said that you romanced the heck out of Toronto? That you wooed everybody? Men, yes, perhaps. Women, perhaps, actually, men and women. Or do you want it said that you were a kind human being that made a difference? That you came to debating each night and you gave thoughtful arguments and you helped contribute to a better society? Ladies and gentlemen, which is more important? Please support this resolution.
Thank you to our debaters. And that ends the official portion of the debate for tonight. We're going to move to the adjudication. I'd like to ask Gerry to come up and Gerry and Dean to come up and present their findings for 7 minutes.
You want the tape on?
So is the camera?
I wanted to say, first of all, romance is overrated, so is adjudicating. Was an interesting debate. I don't think it was one of the better debates that I've heard. One of the things myself as an adjudicator is always looking for is where are the rebuttals, where are the arguments, and it was really, really difficult to search out which was which when people were speaking. Sometimes, for instance, in the first speaker, Michelle's talked for a couple of minutes, and then she said, okay, now here's my first argument. And then I went, oh, well, what was all that stuff you were talking about? And that was all the lead-in. And in fact, all that stuff should have been probably put in with the arguments, which were listed 1, 2, 3, 4 with not very much backup for each thing. And that happened, unfortunately, I think with all of the speakers. There was a lot of content that might have been rebuttal, might have been argument, and was sort of left to us to figure out which was which is very difficult when you're an adjudicator. Jump in, Dean.
Jump in. No, just to follow up with what Gerry was saying, I think that as an adjudicator, you do want that sort of point A, B, C, D, and then content for point A. Here are my arguments. Here's my content, and this is why I'm trying to woo you to my argument, as it were. And unfortunately, romance in that respect was probably not quite dead, but certainly less than a significant pulse.
It was overrated.
It was overrated, yes, indeed. Now, I think, and as Gerry said, the content was there as far as ideas, but I don't know what the comments were from the audience while we were adjudicating. Would it be interesting to sort of see that and hear your comments, whether or not you were able to make sense of the arguments that were put forward and agreed with the content that was used as backup. I mean, there were interesting ideas. I think, again, the points that were brought out by the government leader, romance does not guarantee long-term partnership, communication, you have to have your partner's back, subjective, changes with your age and need, leads to disappointment, romance does, and it's addictive, and infidelity. That would have been a fantastic, that addictive infidelity point would have been fantastic to do, you know. The Ashley Madison idea that was brought up by the opposition, this website you can access for you know, fun, rather salacious romance, as it were, is great, but it wasn't brought out. And I think that the issue that I had was the focus of what was trying to be said by both sides wasn't clear. So the definition said romance is the amorous pursuit of a partner, overrated, results are less than those for which one has been led to believe. So as was indicated by one of the speakers, overrated as compared to what? So where's the baseline for romance? Is it the Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie Hollywood thing? Is that romance? Is it the movies? Is it you know, the National Enquirer? Is it the old couple that's been married for 40 years that still has that spark in the love? I mean, something like that. You can find National Geographic magazine, Scientific American magazine, where they've done this. It's February. So, I mean, even Canadian Living would probably have an article on something to do with romance and love, and is it still working in your relationship? I think that that would have been something effective for me as not just an adjudicator, but a listener, to say, oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Because guys are dumb when it comes to romance. Right off the bat, you see how many Valentine hearts, cards, flowers, and everything else get sold. They don't think. They just go out and get it, and the woman goes, oh, that's lovely.
I'm going to jump in here right
So,
Thank you.
The other way around too.
in my mind, I guess it is overrated. I don't know, but
Don't go away.
I'm not going to go away.
And so, Michelle, you had a lot of content that should have been put into your arguments. That's what I got out of it. Parampreet got up, and I sat there and listened for the first couple of minutes saying, what is he doing? Because it wasn't clear to me what that was all about. I knew there was something going on, but I didn't get it. I'm not sure whether Dean got it, but I didn't quite get it. After you got through with all that wooing and flattery and the nice talk, then you got into some good stuff, and then you had some really good content. But the first part lost me. Anyway, the seconder for the government came up with some rebuttals that I thought were a little bit weak. You rebutted some of the stuff that Parampreet said, and then you got in and you had a couple of very strong arguments, and I like those. Michael, you had 3 or 4 really good points of rebuttal, very strong points of rebuttal, and 3 solid arguments. And to me, you were the reason that we gave the debate to the opposition. You were the best debater, you had some solid arguments, and you carried it for the opposition. Congratulations. And the score, we had it at 51 for the opposition, and 30 at the public, and 32.5 for the government.
And the vote of the audience actually backed up the adjudicators. It was 10 for the opposition and 4 for the government. So thank you both sides.
Voting's overrated.
So we are. So that we're going to close the debate for this evening, and we will be moving on to the dark horse for good stuff.
For many drinks.